All right, so today we're going to start doing something a little different just to make sure we keep learning what's going on. You do want to make sure you work with the video to complete this portion of the worksheet. Understand that everything needs to be correct. If your class is anything like mine, which I'm talking mostly to my class, but I do know there are other people who use these videos. If anything's off, you run the risk of missing your credit, because since I am walking through these things with you, you should be able to get everything right. You should have everything done correctly, and there shouldn't be any issues. So again, work with the video, fill these things out, and again, make sure you're working to get better. These things are not just set up for busy work. We need to make sure we know how to do two-step equations. We need to make sure we know how to combine like terms. We need to make sure we know how to do variables on both sides. So we're just going to kind of walk through these things, keeping in mind that the first thing we do is add 3 to both sides, bring down to 5x equals 20, divide by 5 to get x equals 4. So again, just getting our practice, getting our reps in. 7x plus 4 equals 32. First thing you want to do, because it says plus 4, is subtract 4 from both sides, getting 7x equals 28. Then dividing by 7. 28 divided by 7 is 4, because 4 times 7 is 28. On the next one, adding 6. Remember, it doesn't matter what side the x is on. If x is over here, then everything goes on the other side. 12 and 6 makes 18 equals 2x. Dividing by 2, you end up with 9 equals x. Part of the thing you want to make sure you do whenever you do these problems is that if the x is on the left side, keep the x on the left side, kind of like what we did with Math XL to start this year. If x is on the right, on the left, keep it over here. If x is on the right, keep it on the right. When you get to number 4, again, these are problems that you're eventually going to have to do anyway, which is combining like terms. We notice, for example, that these things are both on the same side, and so what you do is you take your 3x and your 5x, you put them together, you copy down your plus 2, and you go from there. And like I always like to say, to my class especially, from there, you should be home. Subtract your 2, 8x equals 16, divide by 8, and x is equal to 2. That's it. Nothing major, nothing tricky. It's easy enough to work with. All you've got to do is just make sure you understand how to combine your like terms. Now, the secret to combining like terms, especially whenever you have something like this, is to recognize that x is actually 1x, not just, something is not there. So don't put these two together to say 4x. There's 1x here, 4x is there, which makes 5x plus 6 equals 36. You then work out the rest as usual. Again, subtract your 6, 5x equals 30, divide by 5, and x is equal to 6. So all those answers there are, again, based on just getting practice and making sure we get better at it. Really, that's all we're here to do, is just make sure we get it, because again, once you get that stuff down, you're in pretty good shape for the rest of your math courses. Here, again, x and x, that's 1 and that's 1, which means there would be 2 x's minus 4 equals 10. Again, make sure you get that part. Then you're going to add 4 to both sides, bring down the 2x equals 14, divide by 2 to get x equals 7, and that's all. All right. So again, when the x's are on the same side, you combine like terms. When the x is on different sides, that's when we actually move the smaller one. So again, kind of reviewing this and making sure we get it down. We move the smaller x, so minus 2x, 2x comes down, plus 7 equals 17. And once again, we are home. This looks just like these problems up here. Once you get the x's on one side, once you combine your like terms, this, and this all look like the original problems that we started with, which is the whole point of why we had to make sure we worked on them. Either way, you subtract 7, you bring down your 2x and 10, divide by 2, getting x equals 5. Again, make sure you're copying everything. I know in my class, if you're skipping any steps, I'm going to just give you a 0, because there's really no reason for you to, actually I won't say 0, I'll give you a half credit, but you're going to lose 50% of your credit just for trying to skip a step. So make sure you're showing everything that you need to show. Once again, these two things are on opposite sides, and we don't just want to move that. We want to move the smaller one. 2x is smaller than 8x, so we're going to use it by using the opposite of 2x, bringing down 3 equals 6x, because 8 minus 2 is 6, minus 9. Add 9 to both sides, divide by 6, getting your final answer of 2. Same thing here. Which one's smaller would be the 8, so we're going to move the 8x over, bringing down to 3 because the 8's are gone. 10 minus 8 is 2. And again, subtracting 3. And it does happen where you get 0. I did that on purpose to make sure you see that nothing divided by 2. If you have nothing and share it with 2 people, everybody gets nothing. So 0 divided by anything is 0. So that is the general review that we need to make sure we have. Again, I'm doing this not to keep you busy, not just to make you do busy work, but because these 3 types are the 3 types that are going to make a difference in your 134B work in terms of surviving that first semester. Solving is huge in that first quarter, and it'll help you get through some things. This is the stuff that we need to talk about here. For this is going to also be on your test. So all these are actually going to be on your assessment in 3 weeks from now. But the key thing to say is when there's a 4 on the bottom, we multiply by 4. Remember that the 4's go away. Everything else comes down. So your 3x comes down with 24 because that's what 4 times 6 is. You then divide by 3, getting x equals 8. Same thing here, 2/3 x. What we're going to do here is just multiply by 3, multiply by 3. The 3's go away. 2x comes down with 24. You then divide by 2, getting x equals 12. 4/3 x equals 12. Again, multiply by 3 because 3 is what's on the bottom. These 2 things cancel out, bringing down 4x and 36 because that's what 3 times 12 is. Then you divide by 4, getting x equals 9, and that is your answer there. So again, when there's one fraction it's easy enough to do, you just multiply by whatever's on the bottom. And then you have the other problem that's also going to be on your assessment in 3 weeks, which is this here. And remember, what you want to do is look and recognize that if you have 2 numbers at the bottom, you want to multiply by whatever they have in common, which 5 and 2 both meet at 10. 5 times 2 is 10. And so when you go to rewrite it, you want to say 10 divided by 5 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. That 10 has nothing to cancel with, but then you multiply the tops of this, which turns this into 6x. You multiply the tops of this, which turns this into 15. And 10 times 2 is 20. And from there, everything else falls into place because you are now home again. So 6x equals 5. Divide by 6, and all you can put is 5 over 6 is your answer because there's no other way to write that answer. Same thing here. 1/3 x plus 1/4 equals 2. You have a 3 and a 4, which meet at 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So that's going to be what I use here. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that makes 4x. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 3 times 1 is 3. And then 12 times 2 is 24. From there, again, just carefully make sure you take the proper steps to get to where you need to be. And again, pause the video as much as you need to copy this stuff, because again, if you're skipping anything at all, you're losing points more than likely. I know, again, in my class, you're losing half your points just for not copying everything like you're supposed to. 5 and 2 meet at 10. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 2 times 2 turns into 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 times 1 turns into 5. 10 times 3 is 30. And as I said, from there, we're home. 4x equals 25, divide by 4, and x is equal to 25 over 4. And that's all. And then the last 2 things that are going to be on your test or assessment in a couple weeks, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, whatever you want to say, is this. Don't forget parentheses go first. So 10 minus 4 is 6 squared. Don't forget the second thing you always want to do is the exponent, not the multiplication, but the exponent, because it's parentheses, exponents, and then everything else. So exponents go next. 6 squared means 6 times 6, which is 36. 36 divided by 4, because remember, anytime you multiply by 1/4, 1 anythingeth, you're just dividing by the bottom. So 36 divided by 4 is 9. And that just messed you up. 9 over 2 is our answer. There's nothing we can do on that. That won't be on your assessment that way, but it's just how it worked out. And then 15. Doesn't matter how you show it. There are 2 ways to do it. First way is the way we did last semester. 5 goes into 27 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Subtract to get your remainder. Bring down the next number. 5 goes into 25 5 times, which of course gives me a remainder of 0. The other way you can do it is the way that is in a fraction mode, where you can literally just put it into a fraction. Say to yourself, 5 goes into 27 5 times. If you know your number sense, that's 25, which means there's 2 left over, so you put it over the next number. 5 goes into 25 5 times. You don't need to write both. I would say just copy whatever one you would normally do for yourself. But this is honestly the best way to do it if you know how, if you have your number sense and you know how to work with just numbers in general. If you've been working on your multiplication facts and doing what you need to. So turn that paper over and you will see this problem. And this is a very key part of today's work, because on the back of this sheet, you also have to fill out everything that's going on here. So make sure you follow along, make sure you listen, make sure you get what we're trying to do. Key idea here is that we need to figure out whether things are congruent or supplementary. And what I told you yesterday, or what you learned in yesterday's lesson, or should have learned in yesterday's lesson, is that whenever you've got parallel lines, two angles, and that the angles in that system are either congruent or supplementary. So therefore, when you're looking at this, if you're looking at angle 1 and angle 4, all you have to do is ask yourself, is angle 1 acute or obtuse? And from what I know, it's acute. Is angle 4 acute or obtuse? And what I know, it's acute. And since they're the same type, they will be congruent. That's what I know from having parallel lines. Because what we learned yesterday is they're either congruent, which means the same, or supplementary, which means they add up to 180. Angle 2 and angle 6. Angle 2 to me is acute. Angle 6 is obtuse because it's bigger than 90. So therefore, since these two things are different, it means that they will be supplementary. And that is all you have to do to honestly recognize whether or not they are the same or whether they're supplementary. If they're both acute, they're going to be the same, which means congruent. If they're not both the same, if they're both obtuse, then they're going to be the same, which is congruent. But if they're two different types, that's when you know that they're going to be two different types of things, which means they're going to be supplementary. 7, for example, is obtuse. 3 also is obtuse. Notice both of these are the same. They should be the same and the same size, so they'd be congruent. 5 and 7. 5 is obtuse. 7 also obtuse. They'd be congruent. What about 2 and 5? Notice 2 is acute, 5 is obtuse. These two things would be supplementary. So make sure you've got that written down on your paper. Again, make sure you've got the right answers written down. But the bottom line here is, in terms of what you're doing on the lesson today, that is everything that you need to make sure you're ready for it. So the last 2 days we've been working on identifying parallel and perpendicular lines. We've learned that in a problem containing transversal and parallel lines, that they're either congruent or supplementary, which is what we just talked about. We've even discussed the common sense side of determining the relationship based on whether angles are acute or obtuse, which is what we just did. All of this is useful or helpful when algebraic parts get added in, which we didn't do yesterday. We just did regular numbers. But it's important that you focus on what is the key, or what the key is for each situation. We're not going to look at any images for this moment. That'll be tomorrow. But we will focus instead on what's happening with the numbers. So here is what we're going to focus on concept-wise. If we know that 1 is congruent to angle 2, which means equal, then we're simply going to write angle 1 equals angle 2 with an equal sign, because that's what congruent means. If we know that angle 1 is supplementary to angle 2, then that means that the two things add. That's why we're adding 1 and 2 to equal 180. And I believe you have to fill those things out on your sheet. If angle 1 is complementary to angle 2, we know complementary means it adds up to 90 degrees or makes a right angle. Then what you're going to do is take angle 1 plus angle 2 and set it equal to 90, because that's what complementary means. It means these two things add to be 90. Supplementary means these two things add to be 180. Congruent means these two things are equal. So those are the three things that you're going to do, and it does look basic. And that's just the general starting point of every problem that we're going to see in this section. So as long as, again, as you're trying to pay attention to what's going on, you should be okay. What I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to walk through an example of each type before asking you to think through one on your own. Just remember, again, the first two steps are everything that you need to really know what's going on. So this one's going to talk through it. If I'm given that angle 1 is 2x plus 1, which is its measure, and angle 2 is 3x minus 4, which is its measure, and I'm given that 1 is congruent to 2, because 1 is congruent to 2 based off of this statement, we know that 1 is going to be equal to 2. The second thing we've learned is this equal sign allows us to now substitute. So now that we know that angle 1 is equal to angle 2, we can now substitute angle 1 to be 2x plus 1, because that's what it says. So that's what I did. I wrote my angle 1 equals angle 2. I then turn angle 1 into 2x plus 1, and I'll turn angle 2 into 3x minus 4, because remember, that's what an equal sign allows us to do. And then from there, you solve as you normally would. Again, I'm not going to work that out, but that's all there is. Again, if you've practiced and prepared, you know how to do that. That's actually something that we did to start the day. So again, keep in mind, the goal is just making sure we set up something that we recognize. This is our starting point. We don't know what we're doing there. That's just a bunch of words to us. But what we can do is take these words and say, well, that means angle 1 is equal to angle 2. This means I can turn angle 1, I can turn angle 2, and then all of a sudden I have something where all I have to do is start solving and getting my answers as I normally would. So copy this next one, because again, I believe it's space on your paper for this. It starts out saying angle 3 is congruent to angle 7. Angle 3 is equal to 4x minus 2. Angle 7 is equal to 14. The first thing I recognize is angle 3 is congruent to 7. So my first thing should be that angle 3 equals angle 7, because that's what congruent means. The second thing you will do is convert angle 3 to be 4x minus 2. Again, that's angle 3 equals angle 7 is 14, because that's what you can substitute angle 7 for. From there, it becomes a very basic problem. All we have to do is work it out. That's why I said we're home. Add your 2 to both sides. You get 4x equals 16. Divide by 4, divide by 4, and x is equal to 4. Again, not a tough answer to do. The problem is if you don't pay attention to the words, if you don't learn what the words mean, you won't know to put an equal sign there, which means you won't be able to set the problem up, and everything is going to get kind of messy from there. The second type. This one says angle 2 is supplementary to 5, and it gives me 2 angle measures for angle 2. Once again, if angle 2 is supplementary to 5, supplementary means they add up to 180, so we can start by saying angle 2 plus angle 5 equals 180. And then once again, we can turn angle 2 into 3x plus 1, which we do here. We could turn angle 5 into 2x plus 4, which is what we did here, equals 180. So again, once I see it, angle 2 turns into whatever angle 2 was, angle 5 turns into whatever angle 5 was, equals 180. From there, nothing's going to change. Again, the plus sign doesn't affect. We've done some negatives on the outside of parentheses. Plus sign does nothing. So this is the same as 3x plus 1 plus 2x plus 4. And so what you would do is put your like terms together like we did in class to start. The 2x and 3x make 5x. 1 and 4 make 5. You get your 5x plus 5 equals 180. And once again, we're home and we should be able to get there. So again, from there, I'll leave it to your level of practice and preparation. Again, notice how the first two steps. Step 1 is convert the supplementary statement. Step 2 is substitute the information. That sets up everything. And so it's not a hard thing to do. It's going to come down to whether or not you actually want to do it. And so checking out this one again, this is on the back of your sheet also, so make sure you copy it. Starting out with this, the information we get is the angle measures, and then it says that these two things are supplementary. Once we know they're supplementary, we will put angle 4 plus angle 9 equals 180. That's what this tells me I can put. That is the first step. Your second step is a substitute. So angle 4 is equal to 8x plus 15. Angle 9 is equal to 2x plus 5. All that equals 180. As I told you before, this plus sign does nothing. There's nothing outside of here. Let's put our like terms together. 8x and 2x make 10x, like what we did to start the day. 15 and 5 make 20. And from there, you're home. Subtract your 20, subtract your 20. 10x equals 160. Divide by 10, divide by 10. And typically whenever you divide and you have what we call zeros at the end, you can get rid of that. It's just going to be 16. So again, it's not a hard situation. The hard part is, are you paying attention to this word? Once you get that word, it sets up your first statement. Once you get your first statement, you can then convert and substitute for whatever else is there. So given 7 and 10 are complementary. Again, complementary means they add to be add to be 90. So this statement here tells me I can put angle 7 plus angle 10 equals 90 because it says that it's complementary. After that, I can now substitute this for angle 7, so 13x plus 7 plus angle 10 is 7x plus 3 equals 90. From there, because I know the plus sign doesn't change anything and there's nothing going on there, I put my like terms together to get 20x. 7 and 3 make 10. And then from there, I just simply solve as usual. And you get your answer. So again, remember that everything on that paper needs to be done exactly the way it's supposed to and copied correctly, because again, if you write anything wrong, you run the risk of losing half of your credit. So today's work is just going to introduce you to the general idea of what we just did. It's going to then give you an opportunity to practice applying it to actual figures. Remember that we've learned the general relationships for figures like this, such as we know that 1 and 5 are congruent because we know they're both acute. That's what we talked about to start today. So these two are congruent, so you could say 1 is congruent to 5. We know that 3 and 8 are supplementary because these are two different types. We know they're supplementary, so we could start our problem out by saying 3 plus 8 is 180. And all that's doing is connecting what we know from the figure to our algebraic information. So it does take time, but again, we have plenty of time to set you up and help you work your way through it. Just stay patient and keep trying to get better. After this, just make sure you go ahead and go get the second sheet or whatever you would be doing in class. In my class, you should be bringing me your paper so I can look at it, okay it, and then give you the second sheet, and then you'll get to work on your classwork. Outside of that, talk to you later, and good luck.